isn't it funny that, we still, if you think about energy, everybody knows we need energy to function. In the minimum level, we eat an apple, we drink some water, we breathe in deep, but all of that in the end has been converted to energy.
Yep,
and what the ancients seem to understand that we've somehow kind of lost along the way is that the idea of plugging directly into channels of energy. In fact, the electricity we get into our homes is doing just that. It's sucking energy out of the atmosphere and conducting it down the power lines. But it's going into all these, equipment and computers and into the house, which is fine. But what about into us? People are feeling depleted, lackluster, and, this structure of Stonehenge is particularly interesting because these 5 stones in the middle, it seems to be, and from my time in Peru, most of the sacred places have a kind of approach system. So let's say it really was maximum charge in the center. And so these 5 stones are in a kind of semicircle, and there's a spot in the center. Let's say that spot in the center is maximum charge, 100% potency. Most of these places have concentric circles, so there's an approach system that you're adjusting as you go towards that central spot. In other words, if it was for real, as we're supposing it was, for me, I really am 100% sure this was the case. Having been into these spots around the world, they are allowing the person to adapt as they're approaching. Don't know how long they spent at each level, but they're adapting to a level of force and conductivity at each level on their way to the central spot. It's a bit like a mountaineer climbing a mountain. They have camps at different levels, and one of the reasons is not just to rest, but to adapt, to let the system get used to the lack of oxygen at that level. They know the body needs to adapt to those different pressures.
Yeah, acclimatize, and it's the same as levels of energies, yeah.
Yeah, to levels of energy. So the idea of going from 0 or 10%, if that person lives at 10%, into the center of Stonehenge as 100% is too much. So you'd spend time in Peru. They would have like stone gateways, and even after all these years, one side of the gateway, you could feel there was a lesser conductivity to passing through the gateway. So there was something about that block frame. If you stand in it for a moment, it's a bit like in those submarines where they have a chamber, where the water fills up or the water runs out, yes, and the person's got time to adapt. And it's so interesting because you think if that was really going on, they understood that the human needs to have a concentrate of energy. It should have more charge. It should have more power. And somehow we kind of instinctively know that. People know that they want to feel something. They want to have a certain breeze or force or charge running through their system. And it's normally translated just as emotion, emotion, energy motion. So everybody's looking for an emotion that makes them feel good, makes them feel better, makes them feel a meaning to life, right? But if you can get into that situation, there's energy motion being conducted through and in and anchoring in one of those stone circles.
Yes,
it's a very real charge up, just as we do with our phones, but with the actual natural system.
Yeah, and I think that's why at one level these circles and monuments are lined up to the solstices and the movements of the stars. But see, that brings in the whole consideration of timing. And in our modern time, timing's about being at the right place at the right time or getting your taxes in on time. It's a very heavy sort of schedule. But this is where the deeper astrology comes into it. So, we have these really interesting stories when the Spanish Armada was invading England. And there's a story of Sir Walter Raleigh and his men playing bowls up on the hill, and they could see the they could see the Spanish Navy, and it's kind of held up in modern times as how brave and heroic and bold they were. They weren't going off to the battle till it suited them. But, the esoteric knowledge and history inside of Elizabethan England, they were waiting for a planetary alignment so that the power was right to go and attack. And, part of how they won that battle was that the weather changed and the Spanish armada was blown off course, because with sailing ships, you've only got so much control over where you're going. So this whole idea of the timing of something to be at a maximum power point or a maximum potency. So, the idea of connecting to energy, inducting energy in, it like anything, because energy always works by modulation and frequency. So there's always peaks and troughs. And I think that's part of the technology of these circles, because it was a containment and it was lined up, that you would know when were the best times for conducting those ceremonies and for connecting to more potent energies from not just the planet, but from the rest of the cosmos as well.
Yes, and it's amazing the idea of compacting energy. Like in Peru, there was quite a lot of the temples had a sort of small space that were like meditation chambers.
Right.
And if you think about the pyramids as well, there's these king's chamber and queen's chamber, and they're relatively small compared to the size of the pyramid itself. So you get this idea of concentrate. We know that something concentrate has more intensity and potency. Something dispersed, that loses the potency. So you think of all of Salisbury Plains, and then there's this one little concentrated area. And it does make you wonder that without that understanding, and with so many distractions in the modern times, so much you can kind of spend your energy on and direct your attention to, in Buddhism, the main training, there's a particular story I like, the student asking the master, the Zen master, what is it all really about? And he writes on the board, attention. And he goes, okay, but what's it really all about? I got that. Right. He writes under attention. He says, yeah, I see your point, but there must be some other deep meaning to the whole thing that we're doing with Buddhism. And he said, yes, there is. And he wrote attention again. The thing about attention is energy flows along the lines of our attention.
That's right.
So
yes,
there's so many things we can disperse with today to lose energy. And it's difficult to imagine walking into a stone circle. There's no other distractions. The whole thing has been arranged to increase potency as you approach that center piece. And it's very interesting, these 5 large 50-ton stones, trilithons they're called, because we ourselves are a 5-fold arrangement. So it's almost like they knew.
Yeah.
And I'd love to go in there to detect, but I'm sure you'd find that each of those stones is tuned to one of our 5 power systems, which we'll talk about some other time, of course. The Chinese medicine knew it, the importance of the harmony of these 5, but that's just for maintenance. When you think about something like acupuncture, it's really just to keep the person healthy at a basic planetary level. You wouldn't need a Stonehenge, you wouldn't need all these stone circles if it was just basic maintenance. They were obviously trying to catch something that was an extra force from beyond.